Stop the Nazi games indeed. Hallo allemaal, daar zijn we er weer. RHTV live vanuit het mooie Maastricht. Ja, natuurlijk laten we het op de kaart zien. Voor de mensen die het niet weten. Waar het nou precies ligt. Het ligt in het zuiden des lands. Ja. So hello to you all. We are streaming live from Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands. And of course, we're going to talk about politics and geopolitics. And the first thing on table is what has been said in The Hague, right? This is our political capital, right? We also have a financial capital, which is in Amsterdam. But this is the political capital, and there was someone who spoke in front of Parliament, Thierry Baudet, and he was talking about the support we give to Ukraine. Yep. The demissionary cabinet had said we are going to give 10 years support to Ukraine. Now, that is not really constitutionally allowed, right? But we're dealing with criminals, and Thierry wanted to confront these people. And we're going to take a look at what Thierry Baudet had to say. Ja, we gaan even naar Thierry Baudet kijken. 10 jaar steun aan Oekraïne. Kijk, dit kan natuurlijk niet, hè. We hebben te maken met een demissionair kabinet. Ja? Nou, dat betekent dat ze niet besluitvormingen mogen maken buiten het pakket wat ze dan hebben. Ja. Ze zijn gevallen om Rutte 4. Nou, wat zou Rutte 4 gaan doen? Zou kijken naar het toeslagenschandaal. Dan zou ze ook iets aan gaan doen. Puntje, 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 komma, puntje, 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 komma. Er zijn een aantal primaire taken die ze dan moeten gaan doen. Buiten die taken mogen ze niet gaan opereren. Zoals de Rode Zee aanvallen ten opzichte van de Houthis. En zoiets. Dat mag niet. En nu krijgen we dus nog 10 jaar steun. Geven wij dan aan Oekraïne. Buiten het parlementair besluitvorming om. Niemand in het parlement heeft hiervoor gekozen. Het is de minister van Defensie die zegt van nou, we geven nog 10 jaar steun hoor. Ja, maak er maar geen zorgen over. Wij gaan Rusland verslaan. Ja. So, here we have Thierry Baudet confronting the war criminals, right? And basically he's saying that the decision to give 10 years support to Ukraine was outside of Parliament, and the Minister of Defense just said, okay, we're going to give you 10 more years, 10 more years of Dutch support. We have to win the war against Russia. So we're going to take a look at Thierry Baudet and see what he has to say.
Waar het om gaat is dat u allen geschoffeerd bent doordat de regering zegt, we sluiten wel even een verdrag van 10 jaar.
Dank u wel, meneer de voorzitter. Ambtsgenoten, er zijn 2 gebeurtenissen rondom wat ik denk dat het belangrijkste thema van nu is. Die, denk ik, nopen tot een debat. De eerste is dat, en beide gaan natuurlijk over Oekraïne en de oorlog daar. Dat is volgens mij het hoofdthema van wat nu speelt. Het eerste is een debat met de minister van Buitenlandse Zaken over het bericht dat er een overeenkomst zou zijn aangegaan met Oekraïne voor 10 jaar om dat land te gaan steunen. De tekst van die overeenkomst is niet naar de Kamer gestuurd, is hier niet besproken. Wel werd in de mainstream media nota bene bericht afgelopen dagen dat Oekraïne hoogstwaarschijnlijk betrokken is geweest bij die Amerikaanse bombardementen op de Nord Stream pijplijn. Dus Oekraïne, het land waar wij dan nu schijnbaar voor de komende 10 jaar een veiligheidsovereenkomst.
So he's basically saying, right, Ukraine is responsible for bombing the Nord Stream pipeline. And we are giving support to Ukraine, basically, whilst they are breaking the European infrastructure. You know, gas came out of Russia through the pipeline, right? Went through Germany and stuff like that. The whole German economy is flatlined because of the Nord Stream pipeline bombing, and you know, this is all happening. And Thierry just, you know, says that this is all bad. It's all bad. We're not supposed to support Ukraine when they bomb our infrastructure, right? So.
Overeenkomst mee hebben afgesloten, die wij niet eens hebben gezien als Kamer. Dat land, dat heeft ons gewoon aangevallen, heeft onze pijplijn gebombardeerd samen met de Amerikanen. Dat is natuurlijk wel een heel wonderlijke figuur, zeker in een demissionaire regeerperiode. Kan de Kamer daar zomaar mee instemmen? Moet dat niet worden besproken? Ik vind dat we dat niet op onze kant kunnen laten gaan.
U wilt een debat, neem ik aan?
Zo is het.
So he wants to debate about the 10 years of support to Ukraine, whilst that was outside of Parliament. You know, the decision was not made by Parliament. It was made by our Minister of Defense, who was in Kiev dining and talking about the war in Ukraine. Right?
Gaan we even kijken of daar een meerderheid voor bestaat. De heer Krul van het CDA.
Voorzitter, elk moment die wij hebben om onze steun aan Oekraïne uit te spreken, die pakken wij. Dat is belangrijk. Maar dat is overduidelijk niet de insteek die de heer Baudet hier.
So this guy is saying every moment we can give support to Ukraine, we will give it, right? Let that be clear. And he's basically saying that Thierry is working for Russia, Russian interest and stuff like that. This guy here, Paternotte, now that guy is real bad news, you know. We're going to hear from him too.
Kiest, dat vinden wij jammer, maar goed, dat zijn we inmiddels wel gewend. En met die insteek absoluut geen steun. De heer Paternotte heeft recentelijk nog een debat ook hierover aangevraagd, waar wij ons steun aan hebben uitgesproken. Ja. En op dit verzoek absoluut geen steun.
De heer Paternotte, D66.
Ja, voorzitter, dit debatverzoek vanuit een spreekbuis van het Kremlin is buitengewoon onverstandig. Maar wat ons betreft ook nog een beetje lui. Want samen met de heer Veldkamp is er een debat aangevraagd over Oekraïne, wat over 2 weken in de agenda's staat. Dus dit debatverzoek is tot...
So he's basically saying Thierry is you know, talking for the Kremlin and this and that, and there is a debate planned for over the next 2 weeks, right? And why not now? Why not talk about it now? You know, you guys are supposed to support Ukraine, whilst Avdiivka is taken by Russian hands. You know, it's amazing. Really is amazing. These people live backwards. You know, they live like a year or so backwards. Because what Thierry said about, you know, the U.S. and Ukraine bombing the Nord Stream pipeline, you heard it on RHTVLive first, right? We talked about this months ago.
Totaal onnodig.
De heer Brekelmans, VVD.
Ja, over 2.
Now, this guy here, Brekelmans, is also one of the war hogs that we have in The Hague, right? He's saying, we got to give support to Ukraine. We got to give more weapons. We got to give this. We got to give that. You know, we got to defeat these Russians. That's his point of view.
2,5 week groot Oekraïne-debat. Dan zullen wij onze steun aan Oekraïne weer volop uitspreken. En dan kan de heer Baudet ook zijn onzin weer herhalen.
De heer Van Baarle van Denk.
Ja, voorzitter, even los van de argumentatie van de heer Baudet.
Now this here is the heer Van Baarle from Denk, which is basically a Muslim party within the Netherlands, right? And normally they are opposed to each other, the FVD and Denk, but now Denk is like, yeah, maybe we should talk about Ukraine.
Daar vind ik het wel dat we onszelf als Kamer serieus dienen te nemen en dat het nogal wat is dat een demissionair kabinet een veiligheidsovereenkomst van 10 jaar sluit. Ja. Ik vind zelfstandig dat feit dat we daar best een debat over kunnen voeren vanuit die optiek steun, voorzitter.
Dan de heer Dassen van Volt.
Voorzitter, over 2 weken groot debat over Oekraïne, waar we allemaal kunnen aangeven dat we Oekraïne voor de langere termijn moeten blijven.
So this guy here is from Volt, right? Which is a pro-European political party and supported by George Soros and funded, and they're everywhere, right? They're also in the Belgian parliament, they're also in the German parliament under the same name, right? Volt. They're also in the Italian parliament, all over Europe. This is basically Soros' influence within the Dutch parliament.
Steunen, dan kan dit ook bij betrokken worden.
De heer Grinwis, ChristenUnie.
Steun aan Oekraïne, steun aan het al ingeplande debat en dus geen steun aan dit debat.
So, ChristenUnie is the Christian party, basically. There are 2 Christian parties. We have the CDA, the Christian Democratic Appeal, and the CU, the Christian Union. And, that guy is also saying, we're going to give support to Ukraine. We don't want to debate about this right now. But over 2 weeks, we're going to get that big debate.
De heer Veldkamp, NSC.
Ja, voorzitter, NSC is voor stevige steun militair en civiel aan Oekraïne. Daarbinnen is zo'n bilateraal veiligheidsakkoord.
So this snake here is from the NSA, which is the new political party from Peter Omtzigt. And he's saying, yeah, we got to give more support to Ukraine, not only weapons, but also military support, right? And there's also a war hog in The Hague.
Het arrangement zeker voorstelbaar, maar het zou een demissionair kabinet hebben gepast om dat eerst steun voor in de Kamer te vragen.
Dat is mijn punt.
En, voorzitter, we hebben op 14 maart hebben we een groot debat over de...
So he says that the demissionary cabinet should go to parliament for a debate about this. And Cherry says, yeah, that's what I'm saying, We are sidelined here. And, they're trying to shush him. And the snake keeps on talking. And all these other snakes, they want to bite Cherry.
De materie.
Dat geen steun.
Geen steun voor dit debat.
De heer Tuinman.
Nee, ook geen steun.
Diederik van Dijk, SGP.
Binnen 2 weken later een serieus debat over Oekraïne, dus nu geen steun.
De heer De Hoop, GroenLinks, PvdA.
Geen steun.
De heer De Roon, PVV.
We praten heel regelmatig met de minister van Buitenlandse Zaken over Oekraïne en daar kan dit ook dan wel bijgevoegd worden op enig moment binnen de komende tijd.
De heer Dijk, SP.
Dus geen steun? Of wat?
De heer Dijk, SP.
Voorzitter, totaal andere argumentatie dan het Forum voor Democratie heeft. Leuk dat er een debat is gepland over Oekraïne, maar volgens mij is het ook een hele grote oorlog en een groot onderwerp. En doet het er niet toe of je Oekraïne wel of niet steunt. Volgens mij steunen er heel veel partijen in deze Kamer Oekraïne wel. En is het denk ik erg goed om wel een debat te gaan voeren over een 10-jarig verdrag. Daar is helemaal niks geks aan.
So he's basically giving support. The SP, the Socialist Party, gives support to the FVD. They also want a debate, but there's not enough support for a big debate right now because the debate is over 2 weeks, right? And we also have the living Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, who has basically a position within NATO, right? So we are in a transformation period within a new cabinet, whilst we also have the old cabinet Mark Rutte is still prime minister, but because of that position he also has other options after this. And, all the indications show that he's going to go to NATO.
Dat is een steun, neem ik aan. U heeft geen meerderheid, meneer Baudet.
Nee, maar ik heb wel 30 leden.
Nee, ook dat niet.
Nou,
Nee.
Was de steun van, waren de woorden van de heer De Roon die lastig te verstaan waren, bestonden die uit geen steun?
Samengevat zou ik dat willen zeggen, ja. Dus
is dat zo? PVV geeft geen steun?
Dat klopt. Dus u heeft geen 30
Kijk,
leden.
ik wil één ding zeggen. Ik erken mijn verlies hier, maar het is wel heel merkwaardig om te verwijzen naar een debat over een paar weken, waar namelijk als het gaat om dat de Kamer gewoon gepasseerd wordt met een verdrag dat wordt gesloten. En dan mogen we er misschien allemaal een plasje over doen over een paar weken. Maar waar het om gaat is dat u allen geschoffeerd bent doordat de regering zegt, we sluiten wel even een verdrag van 10 jaar. Ja. Zonder dat wij dat zelf maar hebben kunnen zien. Ja. Daar gaat het om. En kennelijk leeft dat helemaal niet. Tweede punt.
So he's talking about the 10-year relationship we now have with Ukraine. The Minister of Defense just thought of that. We're going to support you for 10 years, whilst the Parliament is, set aside, and no one really thinks about that. That's what Thierry basically says.
Waar ik een debat over wil.
Juist.
Het tweede onderwerp waar ik een debat over wil, sluit heel erg op aan, gaat ook over Oekraïne en de levensgevaarlijke route die wij nu in deze oorlogshitserij gaan. Rutte, de premier, die is in de race voor het secretaris-generaalschap van de NAVO. En heeft nogmaals hele harde oorlogstaal gesproken. Gezegd dat ook een nieuw kabinet mag niet die steun herroepen. Dat gaat ook niet.
So Rutte, right, he's leaving his position as prime minister. Basically, he has maybe a position at NATO, right? And Rutte says the new cabinet must give support to Ukraine. But, that's for a new cabinet to decide, right? This is not democratic. It's really, really weird, man. But, this is all happening.
Niet gebeuren, dat is op zich al vreemd. Maar toen kwam later diezelfde dag naar buiten dat Rutte ook van mening is dat als hij secretaris-generaal zou worden op 4 april aanstaande, dat hij dan ook nog tegelijkertijd premier kan blijven. Nou, wat je ook maar vindt van de oorlog.
So Rutte says, I can be General Secretary of NATO and I can still be a Prime Minister of the Netherlands. So he has 2 jobs, right? And both have other interests and stuff like that. And Thierry is saying that is not possible. You cannot be a cop and a firefighter, and when you have a crime and a fire during the same time, which, what are you? Are you a cop or are you a firefighter? You cannot have both positions. And that is what Thierry is underlining here.
En wat je maar vindt van de NAVO en wat je maar vindt van zijn ambities. Ik denk dat ook hier de Kamer toch zou moeten onderkennen dat dat een schoffering is van het ambt, het premiersambt. En dat wij als Kamer moeten reageren op dit nieuwsbericht, een debat hierover moeten houden en moeten zeggen, luister vriend, als je weg wil naar de NAVO moet je dat misschien maar doen. Ik zelf ben voor een afkoelingsperiode. Ik vind dat je überhaupt niet vanuit je positie in Nederland in 1 keer door kan springen. Want dat...
So Thierry is basically saying there's a cool-off period. Right, that is what he's promoting, a cooling off period where you for a year or something like that, you have no position anymore, and then you go on with life, having other positions, and I think that's good, because right now you have a prime minister who's on the hot seat, right? We're going to fight Russia. we're going to fight Russia to the last man standing. I don't see him going to the front lines, right? I don't see him going to the front lines, you know. And, you know, he's on the hot seat and he must cool off for a while. You know, George Washington, the founding father, you know, after 2 periods, he said, no, I don't want to be a president anymore. I'm going off to the fields, off to my farm and, you know, live my life. And all these founding fathers did the same, right? But over here in the Netherlands, it's all one big political paradigm. And when you're in the paradigm, right, you cannot get out anymore. Hier in Nederland hebben we te maken met een politieke paradigma. Ja, als je eenmaal in de paradigma zit, ja, dan gaan de deuren voor je open, joh. Ja, dan kun je vanaf premier zijnde, kun je secretaris-generaal van de NATO zijn. En zoiets allemaal. Weet je, oh my god, man. You know, the conflict of interests. It's like, oh my god. But our parliament is like, nothing's happening here. You know, it's all fine and dandy.
Dat heeft altijd de schijn van belangenverstrengeling. Maar in elk geval kan je het toch niet combineren. Ja. Wij laten toch niet onze premier, dat premierswerk als een soort part-time baantje doen. Dat kan toch niet? Er moet hier snel over gesproken worden.
U wilt een debat?
De Kamer moet zich laten horen.
En ik ga kijken of daar een meerderheid voor is. De heer Krul van het CDA.
Ja, voorzitter, als mijn oma wielen had, dan was ze een fiets.
Is
en
dat
daarmee,
zo?
Ja, zeker. Daarmee wil ik zeggen dat al het gedoe als dit, als dat. En ik heb op Twitter gelezen zo. Kom op zeg. Absoluut geen.
So he's basically saying, if my grandma had wheels, she would be a bike. It's like, what? What kind of comment is that? I mean, come on. You know, there's a conflict of interest, right? And all these people, they don't care. They don't care because they're in the political paradigm. Zij zitten vast in het paradigma. Hun maakt het allemaal niks uit. Ja? Want zij zitten vast in het paradigma. Ook al zeggen ze ja of nee, het maakt allemaal niks uit. Zij krijgen toch voor hun volgende baantje. En daar betalen wij als Nederlandse belastingbetaler voor. Ja. So this is all happening, man. You know, these people do not care. I don't see any one of these people going to the front lines. I don't see them losing limbs, you know. No, Ukraine's got to fight the war, right? Yeah. Screw you. Screw you, Brekelmans. Screw all these people.
Geen steun voor dit debat en laten we even volwassen blijven met elkaar.
De heer Van Baarle, denk.
Ja, voorzitter. Wat ons betreft lijkt het me wel zinvol om hierover te spreken. Ook om meer duidelijkheid over te krijgen wat de ambities van de heer Rutte zijn. Ook omdat ik wil kunnen reconstrueren.
So Van Baarle says, yeah, you know, we should talk about this. But he also said that in the last thing that Jay brought in, right? Yeah, we're supposed to talk about Ukraine. Yeah. But over 2 weeks, we got a big debate about that. Over 2 weeks, you know, Russia is gaining ground, right? And, you know, we're not for Russia. We're not for Ukraine. We want this war to end. Right? That is what we want. We don't want any more people to die. But all these people, they don't care.
Of de opstelling van de Nederlandse regering in de afgelopen periode daar misschien wat mee te maken heeft gehad. Dus steun, voorzitter.
De heer Brekelmans van de VVD.
Geen steun en sowieso zit Stoltenberg nog tot het najaar. Dus treedt er tot die tijd geen nieuw SG aan, wie het ook is.
So he's saying Stoltenberg is going to stay until November, you know. after the year is almost done. So, he doesn't give support. And here we have Paternotte, who says Thierry is a spokesperson for the Kremlin. It's really, really sad, man. Really, really sad. These people are war hogs.
Maar geen steun voor dit debat.
De heer Paternotte, D66.
Voorzitter, volgens mij is er nog nooit een kandidaat-secretaris-generaal zo transparant geweest over zijn ambities als de huidige premier. En verder sluit ik me aan bij wat de heer Brekelmans.
So he's saying that the prime minister is very transparent about what he wants and this and that, and no support for a debate, right?
De heer De Hoop, GroenLinks, Partij van de Arbeid.
Geen steun.
De heer Grinwis, ChristenUnie.
Idem, geen steun.
De heer Diederik van Dijk van de Staatkundig Gereformeerde Partij.
Geen steun.
De heer Tuinman van BBB.
Geen steun.
De heer Dassen van Volt.
Geen steun.
Veldkamp NSC.
Geen steun voor deze debattaanvraag, voorzitter.
So there you have it, right? The FVD gets no support from the people within Parliament because they're all selfish bastards, right? They're all selfish bastards, monsters. Now, I'm going to show you the heer Brekelmans. Yeah. So we're going to look at Twitter and see Brekelmans. There you have him, Ruben Brekelmans. Now, this is the guy that, political snake. VVD Tweede Kamerlid, Buitenlandse Zaken, Asiel en Migratie, Brabander. No. So he's parliamentary, he's in parliament with the VVD, foreign affairs, migration and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And basically he's saying we need to give more weapons and stuff. Na alle onnodige verwarring over grondtroepen naar Oekraïne moet de focus scherp blijven. Meer wapens en munitie sturen. Sneller leveren en taboes op wapensystemen Taurus en Attack, whatever, doorbreken. So you're saying more weapons and more munition. We have to give it quicker, and we have to break every taboo on every weapon that we can use. Deel voor onze veiligheid. Deze deal voor onze veiligheid zou niemand moeten weigeren, zelfs Trump niet. So this deal for our security, no one should oppose, not even Trump. Right? This guy's a war hog. He's never been to war. But he's supporting war, right? This guy is bad news. You are my enemy, Ruben Brekelmans. You are my enemy. You are a very, very bad person. Right? We need to quit the war. Dit is toch triest, man. Dat een van de knakworst gaat zeggen van, ja, we moeten meer wapens leveren. Sta jij dan aan de frontlinie? Do I see you on the front line? No, of course not. Of course not. You're just sitting there behind your desk making up all these stupid arguments about supporting Ukraine. Ondanks bedreigingen gaan dappere Russische oppositieleden door. Goed gesprek met Dmitri Goedkov, die eerder werd vastgezet in Rusland en nu strijdt in de oorlog in Oekraïne. Ja, zie ik jou dan strijden. Ja, meneer Brekelmans. Ga toch weg, man. Politiek is niet voor jou. Ja? Je loopt achter, jongen. Je loopt maandenlang achter. Maar goed. We're also going to take a look at other stuff. So that's Dutch politics for you. You know, war hogs in The Hague. They've never been to war, but they want to send your family members to war, your sons, your daughters, you, yourself, you know, go fight in Ukraine. Go fight in Ukraine. Ga er weg, man. Pak zelf een wapen. Hè? Pak zelf een wapen. Ga naar Oekraïne, Ruben Brekelmans. You go, Ruben Brekelmans. You go to Avdiivka and take over Avdiivka. Huh? You do that. Really pisses me off, all these war hogs, you know. Anyway, we're also going to take a look at some other geopolitical stuff. We have Turkey making a military deal with Somalia. Now, why would Turkey make a deal with Somalia? If you've been looking at RHTVLive, you would know why, right? It's because of Ethiopia. Ethiopia wants support. They want access to the sea. And they had made a deal with Somaliland, which is a breakaway state of Somalia, the English part of Somalia, and under the table deal for port access, and Somalia does not want that. We also saw the Somali president going to Egypt, right? And now there is a deal with Turkey. So we're going to take a look at that. Ja, mensen, er is een militaire overeenkomst tussen Turkije en Somalië. Dat heeft natuurlijk te maken met Ethiopië. Hè? Die willen tot de zee komen. Hè? Ze willen een haven hebben. En er is nog geen land die hun daar steun in geeft. Somaliland dan wel. Hè? Dat is de Engelse gedeelte van Somalië. Die hebben wel onder de tafel een deal gemaakt. En Somalië pikt het niet. En ja, we zagen de Somalische president naar Egypte toe gaan. En nu hebben ze dus een deal met Turkije. We're going to take a look at that. So I also see a lot of other stuff appearing. Let's see here. By the way, the fucking Rutte will be new leader of NATO. Yeah, we talked about that just now. But we're going to talk about this right now. Will Turkey defend Somalia against Ethiopia, right? Because Ethiopia wants access to the sea and they are on a war path.
This video is brought to you by Incogni. On Wednesday last week, the Somali cabinet signed a defence agreement with Turkey, which will basically allow Turkish forces to operate on Somalia's behalf in Somali waters and airspace. While Somalia's president has claimed the deal is mostly focused on the issues of piracy and fishing, it's hard to believe it doesn't at least have something to do with Ethiopia's new port deal with the breakaway territory of Somaliland, which hasn't gone down well in Somalia. So in this video, we're going to have a look at this new deal, how it fits with Turkey's wider foreign policy ambitions, and whether it makes a regional conflict in the Horn of Africa more or less likely. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's start by looking at the deal itself. Well, while we don't have the full text just yet, according to Middle East Eye, the agreement, technically called the Framework Agreement for Defence and Economic Cooperation, will last for 10 years and is intended to be developed over time via various protocols. As the name suggests, there's an economic and a military component to the deal. Economically, Turkey is planning to help Somalia develop port facilities and ships to better take advantage of its marine resources. Militarily, the Turkish army will provide training to the Somali army, and the Turkish Navy will be deployed in Somali waters to prevent terrorism, piracy, looting, illegal fishing and smuggling. Turkey is also apparently going to help Somalia develop its own navy, which doesn't exist yet. So what's the strategic thinking behind this deal? Well, from Turkey's perspective, there's both an economic and a geostrategic rationale. Economically, there have been some reports that Turkey is going to receive 30% of all of Somalia's maritime revenues, which would come mainly from fishing, and the deal will probably also mean more Turkish arms sales to Somalia, which is yet more good news for Turkey's booming defence industry. Geostrategically, though, this deal will help expand Turkey's growing influence in Africa and the Middle East. Essentially, as Western influence in Africa wanes and China's foreign investment slows, Turkey has tried to step into the emerging geopolitical power vacuum in Africa, deploying troops, upgrading diplomatic relations, investing lots of money, and even broadcasting Turkish telly across the continent. Somalia is a paradigm case for this. Turkey began investing in the country in 2011, establishing the largest Turkish embassy in the world in Mogadishu, and extending more than $1 billion in bilateral humanitarian aid since. Turkey now has a military base in Mogadishu, and Turkish companies have significant interest and influence throughout the country. Mogadishu Airport is managed by a Turkish company, and in 2020 the Somali government signed a 14-year contract with a Turkish company to rebuild its main port. From Somalia's perspective, there's obviously a security rationale, given Somalia's long-standing piracy problem and the current tensions with Ethiopia. But there's also an economic rationale. Somalia has the second largest coastline of any African country after Madagascar, and therefore one of the largest maritime exclusive economic zones, or EEZs, defined by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, as the area extending 200 nautical miles from a country's coastline. Unfortunately for Somalia, its inability to police its EEZ has meant the country has struggled to take advantage of the economic opportunities that should be provided by it. Somalia lacks the infrastructure to export or import via its coast, despite sitting abreast of one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, and piracy means fishing isn't as big an industry in Somalia as it should be. But perhaps more significantly, geoseismic studies have shown that Somalia could have as much as 30 billion barrels worth of oil and gas reserves in its EEZ. But
you guys are rich over there, you know. But Somalia is very corrupt. You see, there is no centralized power in Somalia. You do have a cabinet in Mogadishu, right? But there is no centralized power, and therefore every region has their own power base, power structure, and they're basically competing with each other, right? In Somaliland, there's somewhat a central government, and they are doing better GDP, gross domestic product. So, you know, and therein lies the rub. Will you have a centralized government or decentralized, right? Which one is better? Well, Somalia is decentralized. If you discount Somaliland, which is a centralized power, right? So, you know, that's basically what's happening in Somalia. This is why there's so much corruption and stuff like that. They're so rich. They have so many wealth and stuff. But yeah, you know, this is what's happening.
Chronic political instability has prevented the Somali government from exploiting them. Most international oil companies gave up on drilling in Somalia after the civil war in the 90s. But in 2022, a US company called Coastline Exploration acquired offshore exploration licenses from Somalia's federal government. It's not going to happen overnight, but with Turkish help, Somalia could end up with a budding domestic oil industry. Nonetheless, while this deal might help Somalia's economy in the medium to long term, Somalia's immediate and primary rationale here is the recent port deal between Ethiopia and Somaliland. We've done a whole load of videos on this before, so go and watch those if you want to know more. But the TLDR is that, for the past year or so, Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, has basically been threatening a regional war in the Horn of Africa if Ethiopia doesn't get near unconditional access to a port. This might sound insane, but it's hard to overstate quite how important port access is for economic development, especially given that Ethiopia doesn't have any great alternatives for international trade. Ethiopia became the world's most populous landlocked country after Eritrea seceded in 1993, and now does most of its international trade by the port of Djibouti. But this is suboptimal for at least two reasons. First, it costs the Ethiopian state something like $1.5 billion a year in fees. And second, it creates an uncomfortable strategic and economic dependence on a country with no particular allegiance to Ethiopia. Anyway, to this end, earlier this month, Ethiopia signed an agreement with Somaliland, an autonomous but internationally unrecognised territory within Somalia, that basically allowed Ethiopia to use the Berbera port for 50 years, in exchange for Ethiopia's tacit recognition of Somaliland as a state. Unsurprisingly, this didn't go down well with the Somali government, who considered Somaliland a part of Somalia. And only a few days later, Somalia's defence minister met with his Turkish counterpart in Ankara, where the two began negotiating this new security deal. So you get the point. Clearly, Somalia's new deal with Turkey is at least partly a response to what Somalia sees as Ethiopia's violation of its territorial integrity. So will it work? In other words, will it deter Ethiopia from dealing with Somaliland? Well, as we see it, probably not. There's no indication that Turkey is obliged to defend Somalia in the event of a full-on conflict with Ethiopia, and it's hard to imagine that Turkey would actually deploy troops against Ethiopia, especially given that Ethiopia and Turkey have pretty cordial relations. Now, to be clear, we're not saying that a war between Ethiopia and Somalia is likely, let alone imminent, but rather that this new deal with Turkey won't significantly affect Ethiopia's strategic calculus. If war does break out, however, this new deal leaves Turkey uniquely well placed to act as a mediator between the two countries, which, coming on top of Turkey's mediation efforts in Ukraine and Libya, would be a real diplomatic victory for Erdogan. All in all, this deal looks unlikely to stem the escalating tensions in the Horn of Africa, which remains yet another flashpoint in a world that feels increasingly geopolitically precarious. Clearly, the current state of the world is plagued by uncertainty and risk, and while you've been watching this video, your personal information might have been...
Yeah, blah, blah. So, that's what's happening in the Horn of Africa, right? A military deal with Turkey and Somalia. And as I've said before, right, Ethiopia wants support, and they are willing to wage war for access to the sea. Ja. Dus Ethiopië wil een haven en ze zijn bereid om een oorlog te gaan voeren. Maar ja, nu heeft Somalië dus ook support van Turkije. En niet alleen Egypte, maar ook Turkije die support dus Somalië. Ja, we zullen zien hoe dit allemaal gaat uitpakken. We houden ons vergrootglas hierop. En ja, dat is één plek die we in de gaten blijven houden. Ook de Rode Zee. Daar zijn ook nog altijd de Houthis bezig. So the Houthis are still in the Red Sea. And they're being deterred by Western armies and stuff. So this is all happening, people. This is all happening, right? And, we're just watching and trying to explain what's happening. Another very important thing is Armenia, right? Here we have Armenia in the Russian Caucasus, and Armenia will maybe split off from the Collective Security Treaty Organization, right? And you may ask yourself, what? Collective Security Treaty Organization? Yeah, that is the Russian counterpart to NATO, right? And Armenia is one of the member states of the CSTO. And we're also going to take a look at the shifting sides of Armenia. And this is because of the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, which was a region within Azerbaijan that Armenia claimed, right? And we know that Nagorno-Karabakh was taken over by Azerbaijan, and the Armenians went back to Armenia, and they wanted Russian support, but they got none. They got no support. So this is why Armenia is looking at the other side, right, at the West, NATO, to to go there instead of the CSTO. So we're also going to take a look at that. Here, Armenia ditches Putin, how France stole Russia's ally.
By Incogni. On Friday last week, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said that his country had effectively frozen its participation in the Russian-dominated Collective Security Treaty Organization, or CSTO, accusing Russia, Armenia's historic security partner, of failing to fulfill its security obligations. For Armenia, this is just the latest step in a tricky maneuver aimed at breaking out of Russia's orbit and realigning itself closer to the West, a maneuver that has seen France in particular emerge as a valuable new partner. So in this video, we're going to explain why Armenia has fallen out with Russia, how France has gotten itself involved, and how it fits into a wider regional realignment. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Firstly, let's explain what the CSTO actually is. The CSTO is a Eurasian multinational military alliance that was formed in the 1990s by a loose club of post-Soviet countries following the dissolution of the USSR. And today it comprises of 6 members: Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and Tajikistan. While the CSTO is far from being what the Warsaw Pact was for the Soviet Union, the CSTO does have a number of benefits for Russia. It's a good justification to have a military presence in other member countries. Russia, or indeed any member, can veto the establishment of other foreign bases within member states, and CSTO members are not allowed to join other military alliances. And much like NATO's Article 5, the CSTO's Article 4 states that an armed attack against one member state will be considered an attack against all members. The only time this has ever been exercised was in January 2022, when a CSTO force was deployed in Kazakhstan to protect key facilities amid a period of unrest that the Kazakh government claimed was stirred up by so-called foreign terrorists. Anyway, why is it that Armenia is turning its back on the CSTO, and more specifically on Russia? Well, as you may know, Armenia's primary security threat is Azerbaijan. Since their independence from the USSR, the two countries have fought a series of wars and conflicts that are a defining feature of their neighbourly relations. Now, as part of a ceasefire signed in November 2020, it was agreed that a Russian peacekeeping contingent would be deployed to Nagorno-Karabakh, which was an ethnically Armenian-dominated breakaway state inside Azerbaijan that was the centre of the many conflicts. But it's the actions, or lack of actions, by Russian peacekeepers that forced Armenia to reconsider Russia as a supposed security guarantor. Armenia accused Russia of failing to maintain the ceasefire, failing to prevent the effective blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh by Azerbaijan, and ultimately failing to prevent the lightning offensive in September 2023 in which Azerbaijan finally captured the entirety of Nagorno-Karabakh, prompting virtually the entire ethnic Armenian population to flee for Armenia. Even after all of this, Armenia doesn't see the threat from Azerbaijan as having subsided. Just this month, Prime Minister Pashinyan accused Azerbaijan of preparing for a full-scale war against Armenia, possibly with the intention of capturing the land bridge that connects Azerbaijan proper with its Nakhchivan exclave. Now, Pashinyan has made no secret of his views on Armenia's security relationship with Russia, calling dependence on Russia a strategic mistake. And it's not even just because of what happened in Azerbaijan. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 also strained relations with Armenia making it clear that it was not Russia's ally in relation to the war, and even sending humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Anyway, evidently Armenia is desperate to prepare for the possibility of another war with...
Now you may ask why all these borders are hardly defined, right? This is because of the fall of the USSR, right? These were Soviet state republics, and Azerbaijan looked a lot different than it looked right now, you know. Here we have a breakaway state, and that is supposed to be Azerbaijani, even though it's Armenian land, you know. So when the USSR fell, the people were drunk, they drew out lines, you know, and this is it, here you go. So that is why you have a breakaway state, Nagorno-Karabakh, which was Armenian, according to the first drawn out lines, but now it's Azerbaijani, right? So now France is involved. They see that Russia basically has thwarted their attention towards Ukraine, and you know, that situation over there in Armenia and stuff is put on halt. And now you see other Western powers such as France and stuff, you know, pulling Armenia towards NATO. So that would mean that Ukraine, which is still fought upon, right? They're still fighting in Ukraine, would be part of NATO, and also Armenia and Georgia also wants to be part of NATO. So that is one very big, expansive power that Russia is competing against, right? We also have Belarus, and there are elections over there too. And we have the sitting president, Lukashenko, who is running for a 7th term, right? And we're going to take a look at that. We found some images of Belarus. Now, we know there were big protests back in 2020, and lots of people fled Belarus, and you know, they went to other countries. Lukashenko to run again, president, to seek a 7th term in 2025.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has announced he will run for president again next year. Lukashenko, who's ruled the country for 30 years, made the announcement whilst casting his vote in parliamentary and local elections. Sunday's poll is the first in Belarus since the 2020 presidential election, which gave Lukashenko a 6th term in office and led to mass protests. The elections are going ahead despite calls for a boycott by the opposition. And for the first time, observers from the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe were not invited to monitor the polls.
Most opposition parties are gone in Belarus. You know, they're either arrested or they're outside of the country. So this is the last dictator in Europe.
Well, let's get more on this with Valery Kavalevsky. He's part of the Belarus Democratic Forces. That's a coalition of parties that opposes the presidency of Alexander Lukashenko, and he joins us from Warsaw. Good to have you with us. First of all, tell us about these elections being held in Belarus today over the last few days and why the opposition boycotted it and urging voters to do the same.
Thank you for having me today. This is indeed an important day because this is actually the first electoral campaign since 2020. And for these 3.5 years, Lukashenko lived through fear because of his illegitimacy, because Belarusian people refused to accept him, because they refused to turn the page as he insisted. And these 3.5 years, Belarus has lived through mass repressions. About 6% of the population were forced to leave the country because of the persecution, because they were unable to enjoy any fundamental basic human rights and freedoms. And even this electoral...
Lukashenko, you are a fat pig, right? You're supposed to get out of politics, right? 7th term. You know, you've been in power for more than 30 years, you know, and you still want more power? Really? You are a fat pig, right? Go to your hockey stadium and, you know, play hockey all day. But stop being president. You know, they need a new president that would be democratic, right? If you look at the Russian elections, that's also not really democratic, but still, Vladimir Putin had a pause. You had Medvedev, or what's his name, as president for 2 terms. So, you know, even Russia got another president, and even though Putin is still in power, you know, that's also a corrupt system, authoritarian corrupt system, same as Belarus, also authoritarian and very corrupt. Ja, we hebben hier te maken met een autoritair iemand die voor zijn 7e termijn wil gaan. En ja, die weet niet van ophouden. Dus die is gewoon machtbelustig. Die wil gewoon aan de macht blijven tot aan zijn dood. Ja. Kind of reminds me of the Skeksis. You know the Skeksis? Wait. We'll probably get warned by YouTube, but whatever. Skeksis. There, Dark Crystal. When the Skeksis Emperor dies. So here we have Mark Rutte meeting Ruben Brekelmans. The leader is going to die. Who is going to take power?
I hate your whimper. Quiet! Kneel. Bow.
Mine! I want power! I want power! Even though I'm dying, I want power! I want power! Mine! Mine!
I am still Emperor.
Yep, he's dead. Right? And who's going to take over power? So this is all happening, people, you know. And yeah, this is very, very sad to see that you have all these, you know, monsters trying to take over power. Ooh, the emperor is dying. Who will take over the scepter of power? Who will take over? Who will take over? And you see him almost dying, right? And you see that one Skex is trying to take the scepter. Mine! Mine! I'm still in power, even though I'm dying. This is what's happening. This is what happens when you have power in your hands. Lukashenko is the same. He does not want to give his power away. You've been in power for 30 odd years, man. I mean, come on. Give someone else a chance. Right? No, we're not going to do that. Nope, nope. Mine. Power is mine. Mine. So this is what happens when people have power. They don't want to give it away, right? So screw you, YouTube. I found it on YouTube, and I'm playing it on YouTube. So screw you. Don't give me any warnings and stuff like that. I found it on YouTube. It's on a public space, right? And I'm just showing the audience. So let's take a look at this here. The EU has become a war economy.
All right, Alexander, let's talk about the European Union's push towards a war economy. Or is it a push towards more centralization of power? Is that what this is really all about? What are your thoughts? Because we are getting a stream of articles and statements connected to how the European Union needs to ramp up the manufacturing of weapons and needs to invest in weapons manufacturing. It needs to increase their military budgets and their military spending. And all of this has to be done from a European, from an EU level. It all has to be coordinated from the offices in Brussels. What are your thoughts?
Well, I should say straight away that there's been a brilliant article about this by Tom Longo. And he points out that really all this talk about rearmament serves a completely different agenda, because rearmament within the EU is industrially, for all practical purposes, impossible. EU industries are in decline. The manufacturing capacity to convert, to transform the EU into a military superpower does not exist. If the EU got all together and appointed the right planners and did a job of fully pooling together all all the universities to churn out STEM graduates and things of that kind. Perhaps in 20 years, with a complete change of industrial policy, they might get themselves to the kind of position where the United States, was 30 years ago, in a situation where they could start producing convincing amount of weapons. But that's not going to happen, and nobody really expects it to happen.
So the EU started off, right? It started off as basically a continent for peace, right? What happened here? No, well, we're still alive, right? Yeah, I believe we are. So we started off as a continent of peace and no borders and, all loving and blah, 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 blah. And then we had a pandemic and suddenly we got borders, and suddenly we had to abide by, keeping distance and stuff like that. And, it's really, really weird. But Europe is declining, right? We are declining. The pipeline is sabotaged by Ukraine and the US, right? And the Netherlands, we don't care. We don't care. The US won't do that. Come on. They're allies. They won't bomb a Russian pipeline. No. You're a conspiracy theorist. This is a train of thought in the Netherlands, right? And if you say otherwise, you are a Putin fan, you love Russia and blah, blah, blah. I like Russia, I like Ukraine, I like any country, right? But we know that every country has their own power structure and their own faults. They weren't any better than we are now. The USSR was bad, but we are now, right, just as bad as the USSR. And we're pointing a finger at Russia. Oh, Russia bad, Russia bad. No, we are bad. We unify against an invisible enemy. Finland joined NATO, right? I don't see Russia attacking Finland. I don't see Russia attacking Sweden or the other Baltic states, right? I don't see that happening. I don't see Russia in Warsaw or other places within Europe, right? They're here in the east of Ukraine, and this is because Ukraine was dethroned. Basically, there was a coup, and you had Bandera radicals that wanted to ethnically cleanse Ukraine from Russian-speaking Ukrainians. And this has all been happening since 2014, right? Now, if we had neighbors, which we used to have, which proclaimed, we are the best and blah, 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 they were the enemies back then. The Germans, right? World War II. Yeah. They were the enemies back then. And now you have neo-Nazis in Ukraine, which we are supporting. Very, very weird, if you ask me. So if we look at Canada, for example, right, we have the Canadian Parliament giving a standing ovation to, a Nazi, a real life Nazi. It's the whole world is totally screwed, man. So here we have the Canadian Parliament that blundered by, giving a standing ovation for a Nazi.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian-Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98. He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. I wish to apologize to the House. No one, including you, my fellow parliamentarians, or the Ukraine delegation, was privy to my remarks prior to their delivery.
I'm sorry, we did not know. I'm sorry. It's like, oh my God, man. Even I knew this, right? Even I knew. Same happened here in the Tweede Kamer. It says, Barry, we did give a standing ovation to Zelensky, the actor who can play piano with his penis. It's we gave a standing ovation to that guy. So you actually have a Nazi, right? Which we fought during the Second World War. We fought the Nazis. And now you have the Canadian Parliament giving a standing ovation to Nazis. The Canadians fought Nazis too. This is really, really upside down world, man. But they don't care. You see, they don't give a damn. If we look at Madeleine Albright, who is burning in hell probably, let's hope so. She said, 500,000 Iraqi children, it was worth it. Let them starve.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
We think the price is worth it. Yep. Saddam, you were a bad man. Bad Saddam. But, killing 500,000 Iraqi children, worth it. That's the price. That's the price Iraq has to pay for their dictator. Even though you guys supported Saddam Hussein against Iran, nothing happened back then. Nope. You were allies back then, friends, so-called. So this is all happening, people. Shifting sides and stuff like that. And it's very sad to see that the world is not getting any better. We also have stuff going on in Serbia with Kosovo, right? Kosovo wants to join the EU, and Serbia does not want that. even though they have no say in what's happening in Kosovo. So that is also brewing to be a war. But when, that is still the question, right? So, yeah, we've shown a lot, as we do every time, right? We still think about Myanmar and the coup government and the war waging over there. Total blackout, not much is known, but yeah, very, very sad to see what's happening there and other places in the world. So I was also watching some video of the Sasquatch, right? Bigfoot. Now, is Bigfoot a mythological creature, or is it really some past remnant? Who knows? Who knows? It's very interesting. There are people that find like footprints and stuff like that. So let's take a look at some Bigfoot material we can find on YouTube. Crazy Bigfoot videos.
What? I totally get it. I wasn't either a few years ago. It seemed so ridiculous and silly to me until I did the research on it, and the research is very compelling. It seems to be a thing, guys. It seems to be a thing. And Danny Sheehan talks about Bigfoot coming out of portals on Skinwalker Ranch. And that's, that's Danny Sheehan. That's not me. So, Bigfoot's a thing. But check this out. Check this out. There is a giant creature here. Giant, big, shaggy creature. Looks kind of ape-like. Tugging that tree. And there's a police tape there. And we'll go through why that police tape is there, and it's there for a good reason. But look at that huge being tossing trees around like they're nothing. I'm convinced that's not a guy in a suit. Okay, look at this. Look at that. Look at that. If you think that's a guy in a suit, let me know. Let me know. Because that does not, to me, look like a guy in a suit. But there are close-ups of its face. Close-ups of its face, guys. And so we're going to go over that. We're going to go over what this thing probably is. But yeah, okay, so this is the story, right? After discovering human remains close to the hunt camp in a shelter made of limbs and branches, the two hunters camped nearby returned the next day to investigate. Yeah, so they found human remains. And let's actually, maybe we should go to that video first. And oh yeah, there's the face. Okay, I'm not seeing the human remain video, but here, I think it actually shows the skull of a person found at that site. But there you go. You got more videos of the being, whatever it is. And look, you can kind of see its face, right? Kind of looks like a guy with a big beard and a big hood. Looks like a guy in a suit. It totally looks like a guy in a suit. Except that he's throwing around huge trees. And so I'm pretty well convinced that it's not a guy in a suit.
So who knows? Who knows? There are many, many mysteries in the world. And, Bigfoot is one of those mysteries. There are people missing in parks and stuff like that. They never return, so it's one of those mysteries, right?
Oh, yeah, he's knocking the trail cam over. So, yeah, so they found human remains, and they reported it. And the police came out, and they set up the police tape. Oh, here they are. Here they are exploring the site. I think this is before they called the police. And you can see the animal bones of, I don't know why Bigfoot would gather bones, but is that the human soul there? Allegedly, if this is authentic. If this is authentic. And yeah, there's their camp, and more videos of the creature. This is a good one where you can see its facial features. And I'm gonna go take you through it, guys. Okay, I'm gonna do it as quickly as I can, but I want you to see this thing, and then we're gonna get to some close-ups of it, and then I'm gonna show you what I think we're dealing with. Okay, yeah, it's kind of looking at the camera. It's very curious.
So over here you see the head, right? Here you have the eyes. It's looking straight towards the camera, towards the trail cam. And this here is the outside features, right? The shoulder, the arms. Here we have the chest. Right, here's another arm. So yeah, very interesting. Is Bigfoot out there? Who knows? This is compelling evidence. So, and we also have the Patterson film, right, where you have the Bigfoot walking and stuff. So, now, I'm not saying that that the Loch Ness monster is real or whatever, but this is a very good possibility that they are still out there, you know, early hominids. Now this one is defined as female. If you look at the chest, you see these boobs and stuff. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? There are mysteries in the world. So yeah. What about UFOs, right? People see a lot of UFOs and stuff. So the government is concealing something. We're not allowed to know a lot of stuff. So who knows? Maybe they're withholding Bigfoot and aliens and other stuff. Who knows? Are we paying attention? I think we are, right? And we're going to close off with Ollie the Octopus. You're paying attention now, aren't you?
This is a scene over South London. I'm here in Fulham. It's the 10th of August, and look what
We will never forget the London riots that happened in 2011. And the then mayor of London went to the boroughs and gave his speech. That was Boris Johnson, you know, the guy partying at 10 Downing, right? When the whole country was locked down, that guy was partying. Yeah, we're gonna party. Yeah, like that Finnish prime minister, who also stepped down.
How do you make your hair so silky, Boris? Salon selected. Let Boris speak. Let Boris speak.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's come out here today to volunteer to help clear up the mess of last night. Thank you. You are the true spirit of this city.
In the streets of London, the peace has been disturbed. Fires burning everywhere, the language of the unheard. There's a generation thwarted with no ownership and pride, and fat cats with bellies as wide as the rich and poor divide. A broken social contract, bottom up austerity. Oh, we can condemn it, but we're paying attention now, aren't we? once and you cared about the truth. We sold out to the free market, made a couple of billionaires, and all we got was this mess and McDonald's everywhere. Keep unemployment high, keeps the cost of labour low, keeps young men out on the streets, and well, what do you know? You head down to Dixon's, you can take some stuff for free. You can get an Apple Mac and a high-def TV. But if you work in Canary Wharf in a bank too big to fail, there's much better looting going on, and you don't have to go to jail. Steal from a generation for the pockets of a few, but it can only go so far, and you're paying attention now, aren't you? Of London, the peace has been disturbed. Fires burning everywhere, the language of the unheard. There's a generation thwarted with no ownership and pride, and fat cats with bellies as wide as the rich and poor divide. A broken social contract, bottom up austerity. Oh, we can condemn it, but we're paying attention now, aren't we? Blame it on the hoodies, blame it on the feral youth. But remember, you were young once and you cared about the truth. We sold out to the free market, made a couple of billionaires, and all we got was this mess and McDonald's everywhere. Keep unemployment high, keeps the cost of labour low, keeps young men out on the streets, and well, what do you know? Down to Dixon's, you can take some stuff for free. You can get an Apple Mac and a high-def TV. But if you work in Canary Wharf in a bank too big to fail, there's much better looting going on, and you don't have to go to jail. Steal from a generation for the pockets of a few, but it can only go so far, and you're paying attention now, aren't you?
Are we paying attention? Are we really paying attention? You know? I think I am, and I think that we are spreading the righteous word, right? And before we close off, we have another video to show. Very, very interesting. A bombshell study about the vaccinations, and who knows, maybe this will cost my channel, but I don't care. Bombshell study, we now have 100% scientific proof why the jabbed are dying suddenly. This is because the heart is pumping a lot faster and stuff like that, and it causes inflammation of the heart. And we're going to take a look at this for a few minutes, and then we're going to close off.
Be anything of a DNA functionality.
Oh, we have to go rewind.
Well, thanks very much indeed. Welcome to the channel. My name is Jim Ferguson, and I'm joined on for the fourth occasion with Dr. Chris Shoemaker from Toronto in Canada. It's great to see you, Doctor. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine, Jim. It's great to talk to you, and we certainly have a lot that's happened since 2 months ago.
Yes, I know. There is a lot. I've been looking forward to getting you back on because I know that you've got some really quite important information to share. And I was going to just say, Dr. Shoemaker, that there appears to be some information coming to light about hearts working harder after having had 2 vaccinations. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. From a September 2023 study published September, that is just 4 months ago. And its lead scientist was Dr. Nakahara from Tokyo, Japan. There were also lead scientists out of one of South America, one from Houston, Texas, and a 4th setting. So 4 major study centers participated in this in terms of finding whether asymptomatic people actually, and without myocarditis, was there any evidence that their heart was straining any harder in the vaccinated than the non-vaccinated? And it was found by Dr. Nakahara, my apologies, Dr. Nakahara and others, that there was not just a 5%, 10%, maybe 12% elevation in heart effort. It's a 47%, virtually 50% increased effort going on in the cardiac cells of vaccinated people compared to unvaccinated. And they found that this elevation persisted for a full 6 months. The reason that we can count on this study as having validity is that they took 5,000 patients worldwide, and they meticulously deleted and made sure that if there was any chance of something being driven that was in any way incorrect, they brought it down to 1,000 patients, 700 who were doubly vaxxed and 300 who were non-vaxxed. And they were meticulous in the study, meticulous in finding whether there was a legitimate elevation or not. And it was proven with a p-value, and the scientists out there will know, a p-value of 0.001 or less. This was meticulous in showing a p-value of certainty that this elevation of 47% cardiac effort was confirmed. In the vaxxed and the unvaxxed had no elevation in cardiac effort for the next 6 months. We now know the reason that people, whether it be 6 months or 7 months or 12 months after the shot, are dying suddenly. There's a scientific reason now proven by Dr. Nakahara and others. And I invite our very careful observers to go to the study, which I know you will put on your website.
So first of all, they make a bioweapon, right, against the population, specifically targeted on Asians, because most Asians have died during this pandemic, right? And it spreads across the world. We have the solution. We got a shot here, and people take the shot because they trust government. Government doesn't care. I just showed you Madeleine Albright that said 500,000 Iraqi kids died, and it was worth it. All the people in politics are saying this is all worth it. I don't think so. We are fighting against the depopulation program, a very, very corrupt monster, and we are on the front lines giving you guys information that no one thinks of giving, right? I don't care. I don't care. This is about the future of the world. They have many other diseases and stuff like that, for future battles. So we need to win this war, right? Are we paying attention? Well, I am, and I hope you are too. So we will see each other tomorrow. We're going to go. I thank you all for watching and listening, and of course sharing, which is also very, very important. We will see each other hopefully tomorrow.